Today I'm going to be telling you the story of how I lost my virginity. And boy, oh boy, is it an interesting story. So I didn't lose my virginity till I was like 18 or 19. I was like relatively old compared to all of my friends. And you're probably thinking like, oh my God, that's like so sweet. Like she probably like waited till she met somebody that like cared about her. Yeah, no, actually quite the opposite. Basically, I was just like embarrassed slash like tired of people being like, oh my God, like Hallie's a virgin. So one night I just decided I'm gonna lose my virginity. I was visiting my friend at the University of Alabama where I knew literally nobody the night that I decided I wanted to lose my virginity. Like it's not like I had anybody in mind for this. So we go out to the bars, and if you know the University of Alabama, I was at Rounders, which that really honestly makes a lot of sense. So I meet this guy through like my friends, like whatever, and we were like vibing, and I was just like, okay, I'm gonna lose my virginity to him. Looking back, I'm like, who the fuck does that? Like that was actually a terrible, disgusting choice, but like whatever. Prior to this guy, I had literally kissed probably maybe 2 other people in my entire life. So I was just like so inexperienced, and I was like making out with him on the dance floor. After a little while, he's like, do you want to come back to my apartment with me? And I'm like, yep. Side note, I also like didn't want him to know that I was a virgin, so I was like gaslighting him the whole time to like make him think that I was like a whore. I have no idea why I did this. I just like didn't want to tell him that I was a virgin. Whatever. I won't get into the nitty gritty of everything, but we go back to his apartment. Do it. It was not good. Like, not good at all for reasons I won't even dive into. And like, granted, obviously, like, I was inexperienced. Like, I had never had sex before, but like, it wasn't even my fault of why it was bad. It was fully him. Like, he was just really, really bad. Anyway, so right after we're done, I'm like, ugh, like, he really icked me out. And I was like, I do not want to stay here with you. Like, I literally actually cannot. I was also drunk. I was like, I just want to go back to my friend who I'm staying with's apartment. So he takes me back, and in order to enter into her apartment, there's like a gate code. And it's like a huge, like, really, really, really tall gate, like 10 feet tall. So he's like, I'm pretty sure the code to get in is 3333. Like, let me try it. And literally I go, are you fucking dumb? Like, why would the code be 3333? That's so easy. Like, you're actually an idiot. Like, no. I am in a mini skirt. I literally hop out of this man's car and I go scale the fucking 10-foot fence, okay? He watches me do all of this. Like, I fall over the fence, vagina out. Oh my God, I couldn't have looked worse. My friend lived on the 5th story of this building. I literally ran over to under her apartment and I'm screaming. I'm like, let me in! It's like 3 a.m. She finally wakes up and comes outside. She's like, why do you look so bad? I'm like, oh my God, because I just had to scale your fucking gate because this idiot thought your gate code was 3333. And she just looks at me and she goes, Hallie, that is the gate code. I was like, okay, period. And after that day, I have never seen or spoken to the man who took my virginity ever again.
My little brother's girlfriend faked a seizure at my wedding. Yeah, you heard that right. The girl faked a seizure at my wedding. People are telling me that enough time has passed and I need to get over it, but I'm sorry. I'm going to tell y'all this story because I don't think I should get over it. Y'all are probably wondering, for what crazy, ridiculous reason did this girl fake a seizure? She didn't want to go home. I mean, I get it. The wedding was fun. I put on a good party, but come on. Okay, let me give you the actual details about what happened. My wedding was a year ago, and I had an adults-only wedding, okay? It was 18 and over. Nobody was bringing their kids. The only exceptions I allowed were my 17-year-old brother and his girlfriend. I was being nice. I didn't know his girlfriend that well, but he really wanted her to come, and I was like, you know what? I think my little brother's a great guy. I assume his girlfriend is a very nice girl. Yeah, okay? If you're going to have an adults-only wedding, stick to the rules. Stick to the rules. I was holding my wedding a few hours from where we all lived, so at a certain point during the reception, my little brother's girlfriend gets a text from her mom saying, hey, girlie, it's time to come home. You're 17, you have school in the morning, okay? And this girl was having a fun time. She did not want to go home. I mean, I get it. Like, it's my wedding. It was the best time ever. So she asks my mom if she can stay in the hotel that my entire family was staying in. And my mom said no. Not to be like rude or strict or anything like that. We just have a really big family and there was no room. Every single one of our hotel rooms was filled. So there was just no way that we were going to be able to fit her. Also, the girl is 17 and her mom wants her home. So my mom isn't going to step in and be a parent for this girl. Her mom said time to go home. It's time to go home. Right after my first dance, my maid of honor comes up to me and she looks panicked. And she tells me that my brother's girlfriend just had a seizure. So now, obviously, I'm freaking out as well. And I run to grab 2 paramedics who I knew were at the wedding and was like, y'all, we got to do something. We have an emergency. I immediately run to where this girl is, and there were already 2 nurses who were attending the wedding that were there with her. And now the 2 paramedics, my brother, other members of my family, some of my bridal staff, everyone's just trying to figure out how they can help her. And the 2 people who were paramedics told me that I needed to call 911, which I did immediately. And an ambulance showed up, came in, took her out on a stretcher, was taking care of her. And this was a big ordeal. Like, they came through the entire reception. Everyone was, like, freaking out. And obviously, I did not care about this. The girl was having a seizure. Like, that is the priority here. My wedding, like, that's not what I care about. I care about this girl being okay. That's when one of the paramedics comes in and is looking at me really stressed out, which then is stressing me out. I'm like, okay, what's going on? And he's like, yeah, we're actually not going to have to take her to the hospital. And I was like, what do you mean you're not going to have to take her to the hospital? And he was like, yeah, she was faking the seizure. She was not having a seizure. Okay, you gotta be kidding me. We tried to continue the reception after that, but the vibes were just completely off. I mean, it was a very, very stressful event, and everyone was so worried. And then, obviously, everyone's asking, like, okay, like, is she okay? What's happening? And we didn't want to expose her for lying, but also, like, everyone saw her. She was just still there. It's not like she left. She was just sitting at a table the rest of the time, which meant, my brother, yeah, he missed the rest of the reception because she needed his attention. That's what he said. She needs my attention, so I just need to be with her completely for the rest of the reception. Not talk to him. We literally did not talk to anybody else the rest of the reception. He was just sitting with her, comforting her. Comforting her about what? She faked a seizure. Like, the wildest part to me is at the very end, when I'm cleaning up with my husband, everyone's left. She comes up to me and gives me this half apology as she's sobbing, like, I'm sorry, it's just like, I really didn't want to leave, so that felt like my only option. That felt like your only option? That felt like your only option was to fake a seizure. I also hope that you know that, like, we're not paying for those ambulance bills. My husband and I were just looking at her like, and I feel like this girl expected us to be like, it's okay, no big deal. And I was like, girl, that was messed up. That's a super messed up thing. You faked a medical emergency. Like, doing that ever is messed up, but you did it at somebody's wedding? Like, what? Are you good? Like, are you good? I assumed, as anybody would, that my little brother would dump her. Like, what does she have to do to get you to dump her at this point? That is a wild thing to do at your sister's wedding. But nope, it's a year later, and they are still together. Happy as could be. And listen, I have tried to forgive this girl, but I just cannot get over this grudge I'm holding for what she did. A lot of people in my family say that I just need to get over it. She's 17, still a kid, didn't know any better. But I'm like, I'm sorry, didn't know any better. She was 17 years old. That's not a baby. I'm hosting family Thanksgiving this year, and I've made it kind of clear that I don't want to invite her and I don't want her in my home. But people are saying that's an overreaction. I don't know. I think that I have every right to not invite her, but I do want to be a good person. It's Thanksgiving. It's family. I don't know. I guess we'll have to see.
How could her body have ended up in the Everglades, but there's no footage of her ever leaving the hotel? This case is terrible from the beginning. On an early morning in February in Miami, it is a chilly day and a woman is found face down floating in the tall grass and mud of the Everglades. Someone comes across the body and immediately assumes she's dead. Her long hair is floating there. She's face down. How could she not be dead? But they still check on her, and to their surprise, she is alive, barely clinging to life. So the police are called and they immediately medevac her. When she wakes up in the hospital, she barely remembers a thing, but there is a ton of physical evidence. She is badly beaten. She was obviously SA'd and raped. There is male DNA, if you know what I mean, on her body. She has severe brain and head trauma. Her bones over her right eye are fractured and broken completely. She had a thick accent and spoke in broken English. It clearly wasn't her first language, and so it's kind of hard sometimes for them to understand her. But essentially she says that she barely remembers anything, and everything that she does remember is kind of fuzzy. She says that she remembers someone, maybe 2 or 3 white men, breaking into her room, shoving a pillow on her face, making her drink something. She doesn't remember seeing them, but she remembers tasting something like strong alcoholic. And then she kind of remembers being slung over someone's shoulder and carried downstairs. And then at some point she remembers being in a car, and in the car she was violated and harassed, and she remembers pleading for her life. But what she's remembering is in bits and pieces, and it's really hard for her to give any sort of leading evidence or anything that could identify who really did this. So detectives learned that this girl had been living at the airport hotel for months. It was only 8 miles from where she was found floating. The reason she was at the hotel is because she worked for a cruise line. While she was on the job, she got injured. So while she was healing, the job had put her up in a hotel. The police look at her room for evidence, they look at surveillance footage, and they interview staff. And the hotel had almost 200 rooms, and it was very busy, so it was hard to really get any leads. Her and her lawyer end up suing the hotel for negligence, and they end up hiring a private detective named Ken Brennan to find out what happened, because the police at this point were not being very helpful. So Ken Brennan is now involved, and he gets with the lead detective on the case. His name is Alan Foote. And so Ken and Alan are talking, and Ken is like, I'm not going to get in your way, but I'm going to figure out what happened, and I will go through you. I'll make sure that everything I'm doing, since I'm technically not a police officer, I'm just a PI, I will make sure everything I'm doing goes through you, and if I have anything, you can make the arrest. I'm not going to get in your way, but I'm figuring this out. And Detective Alan Foote, he was pretty helpful, like he was interested in the case, but at some point when a case dries up and there's no leads, he does have to move on to other cases. So he tells him, go ahead. He gives him some evidence and like gives him some of the files, but he says, I can't keep helping you, like I have to move on to new things. So Ken looks into this case and he is looking at the hotel security system. It was pretty extensive. There was 2 security guards on duty at all times. The back doors were locked at night, and each exit had a security camera. There was also one at the front entrance, one at the lobby elevator, and then more at the parking and the pool. Plus, all the guests had digital key cards, so you could see the timestamps of when they like swiped it to get into their room. So on the morning of her assault, he wanted to figure out where she had been. So at 3:41 a.m., we see that she checked into her room using her key card, and then she was found about 3 hours later in the Everglades. So we have this 3-hour mystery window that we don't know what happened to her. So he uses the security cameras to try to figure it out. We know that she met up with a friend for dinner and got back around midnight, and then between the hours of midnight and 3, she was doing some stuff. And then at about 3 a.m., she left the hotel. We see it on the security footage, walked across the street to a gas station to get a phone card so that she could call her mom in Ukraine. She gets back, we see her on the security footage walking back into the lobby around 3:40, and she gets on the elevator around 3:41, and we see her talking to another individual, just a random guy, and then they both go up in the elevator. She swipes the time card to get into her room, and we see that she entered around 3:41. So now Ken Brennan goes to look at the footage and is trying to figure out how she ended up going from her room at 3:41 and leaving the hotel. And when he is looking at the footage, there is literally no evidence that she ever left. Like, she is not on a single frame, and she would have been if she left, if she walked out the door, if she was carried out, you would have seen her on the footage. So somehow this woman went from being in a room at 3:41 to the Everglades at around 7 a.m. and we have no idea how. Zero evidence she left the hotel except for the fact that she was found in the Everglades hours later. So he's looking at the cameras, and to preface, the cameras are used by motion detector. They are not running continuously, but anytime someone moves, even if they move slowly, even if they move like in weird ways or try to get around it, the motion detection will pick it up. They even tried to tamper with the motion detectors to see if you could somehow mess it up, and there's no way that the cameras would not record if someone was moving. So there's no way that someone tampered with the cameras. At first, they think a possibility is that someone dropped her out of the 4-foot-story window into the bushes, and that's why she had all the bruises. But when they investigate, the bruises don't line up with that, and the bushes were not like flattened in any way. So they know that isn't the case. And they think maybe she was disguised. So Ken starts looking at all the different footage to try to see if she's disguised, and he starts looking at every single individual on the cameras that day, and there are a lot. There is so much traffic going in and out of this hotel. He starts eliminating anyone with a small bag, anyone who it's clear it couldn't be her disguised, anyone who couldn't be clearly carrying her or disguising her, he rules out. After the most tedious time looking at this footage, he finally has only one guy left, and it is the guy that she is seen chatting with on the elevator for like 2 seconds before they go up to the 4th floor. We see him enter the elevator at 3:41 with the victim. He was a large black man. He was about 6'4" and about 300 pounds. He wore glasses. So we see him enter the elevator at 3:41. And then when they go up to the 4th floor, there's no footage on the hallways or near the rooms. So we don't know where he went. He could have even gone to another floor. And then we see him exit the elevator and come back down to the lobby 2 hours later at 5:28 a.m. He is unaccompanied, but he is carrying a suitcase. The suitcase is like a rolling suitcase, so he's dragging it behind him, and he looks cool, calm, and collected. And now Ken Brennan is like, crap, because he's the only person left that I haven't ruled out, but he's just carrying a bag, and this bag doesn't look big enough to like fit a person inside of it. And not only that, but he looks so calm. Like, there's no way that this guy is hauling a body in this bag. Fortunately, this guy, he is determined. This PI is determined to figure it out, and he is honed in on this guy. And at first it doesn't make sense, but he starts watching this footage meticulously and is convinced that this is the guy, and he notices something really important in the video. So we are now talking about her private investigator, Ken Brennan, who has eliminated every single person on the security footage except for one guy, and he is convinced that this is the guy. The problem is, the guy that he is looking at is carrying a suitcase, and he is looking so calm. He is looking cool and collected. If you had just raped and assaulted someone, most people aren't looking this calm. Like, they're sweaty, they're stressed. This guy looks like he is just about to go out for a nice little stroll of the day, and he's dragging the suitcase behind him like it weighs nothing. And yes, and granted, she was a small girl, and he is a huge guy. Like, he's 300 pounds, 6'4", like, he's a big guy, so something like, oh, a small woman's body wouldn't be the end of the world for him to drag behind him, but a body in a suitcase would still be a little bit heavy. And when he's first looking at the suitcase, he's like, I don't know that this suitcase would be big enough for her to fit in. But he figures out the dimensions of the suitcase based off of the video, and they test it out, and it turns out that she could have fit in it. He comes back without the suitcase 2 hours later. If you were just traveling by yourself, you wouldn't leave the hotel with a suitcase and then come back 2 hours later without your suitcase. That's weird. And the thing that Ken Brennan notices on the camera that is really the nail in the coffin, he knows this is the guy. He is pulling the suitcase off the elevator. This whole time, the guy made it seem like this suitcase was super light and he was just going for a stroll. But when he pulls the suitcase off the elevator, the wheels get kind of stuck between the elevator and the floor. And if it was light, it would just go right over that little gap in the floor. But if it's heavy, the wheel would kind of sink down into it and you'd have to tug it. And you see the guy, it's subtle, but you see him kind of struggle to tug the suitcase out of the elevator. So he's like, that suitcase isn't light, that thing is heavy. Now Ken is convinced, and he takes this to the detective Alan and says, I know that this is the guy. And Alan's coworkers are around, he's telling everyone about this, and they just kind of laugh him off. Alan is like, look, I don't think this is enough proof, I don't think this is right, and all the other coworkers just scoff at him, and they say, yeah, right, buddy. So he's kind of hit a dead end. Because Ken isn't actually a cop, he's just a private investigator, he can't actually act on anything. So he can't go get a warrant or go interview this guy, like there's nothing he can really do. But this guy, Ken, he is determined, and he is set that this is the guy. And one thing about Ken is apparently he does not give up. So he decides to keep looking at the footage. He starts tracking this guy's like day-to-day activity from the days before, and he sees him walking out the door towards a restaurant one day in the security footage. So he goes to the restaurant and gets security footage from them. And at one point you can see on his t-shirt that it has letters on it. He blows the footage up and figures out the words on the t-shirt is Verado. And at first he doesn't know what that means. He's not sure what that could possibly mean. Is it another language? He doesn't know. And at first he's worried this could be a dead end. But he goes to Google and he searches the word, and it turns out it is an engine manufactured by Mercury Marine, and this is an engine for boats. And in February in Miami, there was a huge boat convention. So he goes and gets in contact with the people that ran the convention and asks who could have these t-shirts. And they say pretty much anyone who attended. So he's like, crap, that doesn't narrow it down. Months go by. He is meticulously looking over this footage. He is not giving up. The police have since moved on. And Ken is just, he is determined. And starts talking to contacts, trying to figure out if anyone knows this guy. Finally, through connections, he gets a name. It is Mike Jones. It's good news that he has a name, but the problem is Mike Jones is a very common name. There are probably 100 Mike Jones within that little area. So now, how is he going to narrow it down? So he gets access to the hotel logs and sees that Mike Jones had checked in February 14th, which was 7 days before the attack, back and checked out February 22nd, which was the day after she was assaulted and the day after she was found. He gets access to the information of the card that was used on his account, and it was Michael Lee Jones. There was an address for West Virginia, but it turns out that he had been not in that address for years, and the card was no longer used. It had been canceled. But when he looked at the phone number that this Mike guy had left, it was under a business called Centerplate. And Centerplate is a hospitality and food service job. So this is something that if he worked there, it could be making him travel all over. And this could be the reason why this guy is so confident and calm after just raping and assaulting a woman. So he looks into the company Centerplate and discovers that he no longer works there, but he's like, he probably went to a competitor. So he looks at all the competitors in the area and gets 25 different businesses, and he calls every single one of them and says, hey, does this guy work for you? And all of them are happy to answer questions, and they're like, nope, that guy doesn't work for us. Is there anything else you need? Except for one company. And when he calls them, they say, get a subpoena and don't answer anything else. So Ken is like, yeah, that's the place. I know this is where he works. So he calls the detective and says, I've got a name. It is Mike Lee Jones. Come get him. So the detective doesn't know if he fully believes him, but he's like, you know what? This guy's done a lot of work. He's very confident. I'm going to at least humor him and go check it out. The detective and his partner go to check out Mike Lee Jones. So when he gets to where Mike is just sitting outside grilling. He seems cool and calm and collected. So they just start having a casual conversation. And he asks him if he had been to Miami anytime soon. He says yes. He said he stayed at that hotel, and he answers what they already knew. And then he asks if he had any sexual relationships with anyone while he was there. And Mike says, yeah, I slept with a German woman. He says, though, that it's consensual, because when the detective asks him if he raped anyone, he says, no, absolutely not, and acts appropriately surprised. Even though he's not convinced at this point that it's Mike, he gets some DNA and tests it against the DNA found on the victim when she was discovered. And turns out it matched. So the detective immediately calls the PI and is like, oh my God, you were right. I can't believe it. This is the guy, and we have to get him. So they arrest him, and he denies it, but he has a story. But eventually in the interrogation, they finally get his story to kind of crack, and he ends up making a plea deal. He is sentenced to 2 years, only 2 years, for a woman beating her, putting her in a suitcase, and leaving her for dead in the Everglades. 2 years, that's it. So the PI is pissed. He is like, that's not good enough. And so he goes back and looks at records, and using FBI records, he looks at DNA and finds 3 other unsolved cases that match his DNA. And all I have to say is, if I ever have something happen to me, I want Ken Brennan to be my PI, because holy crap, this dude is committed and he does an amazing job. Of the 3 cases, 2 were in New Orleans and 1 was in Colorado. And one of them in New Orleans is able to give a very positive ID, and between that and the DNA, he is sentenced for 24 years to life for one of them and 12 to life for the other. Mike was 38 when he was charged. He won't have a possibility of parole till 2032, and because he's a repeat offender, he probably will never get out.
Am I wrong for not attending my sister's wedding because of her wedding tax? Alright, I'm in a bit of a dilemma and I could really use your judgment. So here's the backstory. My younger sister Emily is getting married in a couple of months, and while I'm super happy for her, there's been some drama over the whole wedding planning process. Emily and her fiancé decided to have a small wedding, which I totally understand, but they also decided to impose a wedding tax on family members attending. They have a list of wedding expenses, things like venue decor and catering, and they expect each family member to contribute extra to make it all happen. To top it off, her fiance's family is also chipping in, making the whole thing feel less like a celebration and more like a business deal. When my sister brought this up, I couldn't help but voice my concern. I told her it felt unfair to ask family to cover the cost on top of giving a gift. I suggested maybe doing a more budget-friendly wedding so that everyone could enjoy it, but she brushed aside my suggestions. We had a huge argument about it, and it turned into a shouting match. I told her that weddings should be about love, not financial burdens. In the weeks that followed, she refused to speak to me and even blocked my number for a while. I felt really hurt, but then I received an invitation to the wedding, complete with a note saying that if I wasn't chipped in, I shouldn't bother coming. I've been debating whether to go or not. On one hand, I want to support my sister, but on the other hand, I feel like it's really messed up to ask so blatantly for cash from family. My parents think I should just suck it up, contribute, and attend for the sake of the family, while my friends are telling me I'd be better off skipping altogether. So, am I the asshole for considering not going to my sister's wedding because of the wedding tax? Am I being a jerk for standing my ground on what I believe should be a joyful occasion and not a financial obligation? Small edit. My sister did not make me a bridesmaid, but I'm totally okay with that. She's having her wedding in a really expensive hotel, and so she's asking everyone for money, but she is not paying for anyone's hotel room, and I'm expected to pay around $250 to $1,000. I'm back with an update on the whole wedding drama. Buckle up because things have escalated, and it's a roller coaster ride of emotions, sibling rivalry, and unexpected twists. So, after much deliberation, I decided to stand my ground and not attend Emily's wedding. I sent her a heartfelt message explaining my reasons, reiterating that I love her but can't support what feels like exploitation of family when joining in a celebration. I thought that might lead to some sort of resolution or at least a civil conversation. Boy, was I wrong. The day of the wedding rolled around, and out of nowhere, I received a text from my mom freaking out because Emily's wedding had fallen into chaos. Apparently, guests who paid the fee were fighting about seating arrangements, and some of the vendors canceled last minute, putting everything in disarray. My mom was in a tizzy, insisting that it was all my fault for not supporting the family during this important event. I took a step back. That wasn't guilt-tripping enough for my vibe. But then I received a call from our aunt, who was furious. She blamed me for Emily's wedding day being ruined, which I find ridiculous considering I wasn't even there. My aunt accused me of causing a divide with the family over money and tarnishing the spirit of the occasion. If only she'd seen the way Emily chose to treat her family like ATMs. As things continued to spiral, I heard through the grapevine that Emily's wedding day somehow went even more volatile. Guests who had fronted the cash got into arguments over the wedding tax, and felt cheated when the food didn't match the expensive price tag. And right after dinner, a huge fight broke out. One of Emily's friends was tossed out for making a scene about the money that they had to contribute, and it quickly escalated to shouting, with both the bride and groom caught in the crossfire. But it gets crazier. My sister's new mother-in-law decided to throw her own fit, demanding a refund because she felt cheated on the wedding package. Emily was left sobbing in the corner, clearly feeling overwhelmed, and the whole scene turned into a reality show level of drama. Her fiancé was left apologizing while the bridal party tried to salvage what little grace remained. Eventually, I got another message from Emily conveyed through my mom. It was a half-hearted apology along the lines of, "I'm sorry it turned out this way, but you still owe me." Nothing about clarity on expense or acknowledging how bizarre this whole situation was. Now I'm feeling a mixed bag of emotions. I mean, I do feel sympathy for my sister. No one wants their big day overshadowed by chaos. At the same time, it feels a little satisfying knowing my intuition about the wedding tax was spot on. I guess it shows that I wasn't the crazy one. The whole situation was just flawed from the start. So here I am, still uncertain about my future with my sister. Do I reach out and try to mend things? Is it too late? Or does this create a moment of clarity for her to reflect on what really is important? Am I the asshole for still holding fast to my beliefs about family and finances when it resulted in such explosive fallout? Should I just let her contact me if she wants to dive right back to help her pick up the pieces?
Get rid of me while I tell y'all about how there was a fight at my school today. But it wasn't just a normal fight, it was between a student and a teacher. Okay, so we start off like at the start of science, okay? Basically, this teacher she just has a problem with everyone. Like, someone in the fucking class coughed and she like told them off. And basically, there was this girl sitting behind me, and her and a friend kept talking, right? Which, honestly, I understand that she was talking, but, like, everyone in the class was talking. And so this teacher, instead of just normally telling the student to be quiet, she tells her to shut up, right? And this girl, like, she's known for fights and stuff. And she starts, like, arguing back. Like, she was like, who are you telling me to shut up? Like, who do you think you are? And then this teacher starts fighting back with the student and like starts saying stuff about her. Like, she was like, "This is why you're failing the class, because you don't ever listen to what I have to say." And then the girl's like, she got mad about that. And then the teacher was like, "You're gonna be nothing, you're never gonna succeed if you don't actually pay attention in school." And then this girl got real mad, y'all. Like, she was so mad. And at this point, like, this girl had actually got up from her seat and went over to the teacher, and they were literally like arguing face to face. And so I don't actually know what the teacher said. Like, me and my friend were literally just like laughing about it. Like, we were like, everyone was kind of in shock, like, what the hell is going on? Everyone in the class was kind of talking as well, because everyone was just like, oh my god, like, what the hell? And then I've heard that apparently the teacher said something about her mom, yeah, and her family. And so the girl swung and punched the teacher in the fucking face. Yeah. And then the teacher started fighting back. She like pulled her hair and smacked her. And then we were all just kind of like, what the hell? And then this boy from my class went and got a teacher from outside and obviously told them what was happening. And the teacher came in, braked it up, and then I think the teacher got fired, and I think the girl is suspended for quite a while. But yeah, that is how there was at my school between teacher and student.
Alo, đấy anh em đang đâu rồi? Thế à? Ừ, thế có hai anh Tuấn có đi không? Thế thì mấy anh em đi à? Út thì đang bận quay chứ không đi được rồi. Đợi tí anh xuống nhá.